Me, I think it's far more interesting if you hear this directly from somebody who's using Box to solve real-world problems. And so with that short intro, I'd like to welcome Roland Dane to the stage. So Roland, come on up. Give him a warm welcome. How you doing?
I'm okay. How you doing?
Awesome. All right, well, you want to introduce
you want to go back to that one slide with the big black ball?
Yeah.
That one over here.
That one?
Because what I don't like about this picture is that our industry is way down there in the bottom, construction and engineering.
But the best is for last.
The good thing about it is, I mean, the guys at DreamWorks, they share really large files.
Yes, they do.
We think 2-3 gigs is big. They share terabytes of files, large files. And the good thing about working with Box is that we can use that technology. You guys are learning with DreamWorks, they're doing all the investment, and we're getting all the achievements. Love it. Next slide, next slide.
Just give you the clicker.
Next one. That one. This is all about us. We're implementing the most high-level work process that there is currently, the BS 1192. No one knows it, good, don't remember it. It's a way of working, it's a new way of working emerging. And we can implement that thanks to all the things we have here.
Say more, what's this, BS what?
The BS 1192.
What is that?
It's building information modeling.
I've never heard of this before.
It's BIM, building information modeling.
Okay.
And it's a way of delivering your project in a way that it doesn't cost, just in the Netherlands, 6 billion euros worth of mistakes every year.
And is it a regulation or a best practice?
It's a regulation.
It's a regulation.
Yeah.
So you're also having to act in accordance with this regulation in the way you do projects. Okay.
Exactly.
Fascinating. Well, and just for the sake of introduction, in case anyone here doesn't know Royal Haskoning, do you want to just give a couple words? They might have figured it out already.
Yeah, Royal Haskoning DHV, we merged Royal Haskoning and DHV into one company. Got almost 7,000 people working worldwide, 100 countries. I don't know how many offices, but a heck of a lot.
Yeah.
And working together in a global perspective on these large files, 3D model files, CAD drawings, you name it, we have it.
Well, I think we've been working together now for a while. One of the things that I think drove your reasoning and decision-making around moving to something like Box, and we'll talk more broadly than just Box, but was largely about customer interaction and making them happy in the way that they interact with you. Maybe you can comment a little bit about that.
Well, we currently have something like 6,500 external users. So that are people that are not within our enterprise that collaborate with us on projects. So if you look at that slide, we first do our internal collaboration, we create documents, we think about things, we prove that they can work, we design them. The designs go through internal processes, workflows which are completely set up, and then in the end they go to the client who collaborates on it with us. It's all in a controlled way, and we can govern whatever we've done.
And if I remember correctly, but I might be wrong here, at the end of a project, you also have to somehow deliver all the project documentation to the customer. And were you doing that before through paper or zip files?
We'd give them a CD, we'd give them paper, we'd give them... What we gave them was a big problem, because they had to manage all their data. You have gigs of data, and you give it to your client and say, here, client, you manage it. But there's worth in that data. It's value. It's the assets. So what we now do is we save the project, we say, client, you were collaborating with us, your as-built situation is up there, you can access it 24/7, we maintain it, it's secure, blah, blah, blah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we back up a step here, and what led you to even look for a cloud-based solution in the first place, and or what led you to look for something like Box, cloud or otherwise?
We did a pilot in 2009 through 2011, I think it took, where we looked into SharePoint with Organize. We looked into several solutions. We looked into things like Meridian, which all come at really high costs. And the drawback of these systems was in that time that you needed a single way of working. But we have so many disciplines, so we have so many different ways of working, which for 70–80% look like each other, but they differ.
Yeah.
And Box gave us the flexibility. But what it also gave us, if you look from a sync perspective, we control the amount of devices someone can sync to.
Right.
And the really interesting bit, if someone would lose a device, Devices can be encrypted. We know which data was on it. We can take it off. We can inform our customer, this data was on the computer that we lost. We can get proactive instead of being in the paper and finding out that we lost a USB stick somewhere.
And how heavy is mobile in your world?
It's getting heavier. I was in the great story. I was in the Liverpool office last week, and about a year ago, these guys, they did not want to go to the cloud. They didn't understand it. They didn't really get it. We've been working with them. Now they're completely in the cloud. They don't want the file server anymore. Their director is actually telling me, get rid of the file server. So I was in there last week, and I was setting up iPads. I was helping most of them with iPads. Mobile is really getting important.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. So I have two maybe elephant in the room type questions for you. So one is, you mentioned in the pilot that you evaluated a bunch of things, including SharePoint. Everybody has Microsoft. I know you guys are an office shop. You're looking at O365. So obviously you could theoretically go with SharePoint Online. So talk a little bit about kind of what's your philosophy about where Microsoft ends and Box begins, and where do those things either play together or not, or, you know?
Where Microsoft begins? No.
I said ends, but anyway.
No, I think that the way we've chosen to go to Box, if you look at the way we work, our project manager, he sets up a project in his ERP system, and a project environment is created for him. It's created on Box. Goes 1, 2, 3, click, it's there. In 3 seconds, 4 seconds time, he would be able to collaborate with his client. He can sync his data. He can let the client sync certain data. He can give certain levels of access. He can control that. There's no other solution out there that can do that.
Not even SharePoint?
No, not even SharePoint. In SharePoint, I give people access and they can download, but I can't make sure that a certain client can only sync to a certain machine or whatever. Yeah. We can control this all.
So more control,
yeah,
more visibility,
yeah. Well,
and easier.
If you ask me, from an IT perspective, you're moving from being in control and wanting to control everything to coordinate that everything goes well. And we're in that transition. So you want that level of control, but you need to be able to also, what do you call it, organize it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so now actually I have 3 elephant in the room questions. So let's go to the second one,
Was
which
it an elephant in the room? No.
that big thing that's in there that no one wants to talk about, but everybody can see. So the second one is, so clearly, you know, cloud, particularly in Europe, I think has some implications, particularly when it's an American software provider, right? So yes, we're global, but by the same token, there's a lot of fear. I've heard that talked a lot about in sessions just this morning about, you know, laws and access rights and so forth, and not unique to the Americans, but certainly here as well. So how much did you have to convince, how much proving did you have to do? I mean, I guess it was a 2-year pilot, so maybe the answer is obvious, but what was that process like to get your company and your compatriots on board with moving to something in the cloud for a lot of, obviously, what's core business data for you guys?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of scaring going around, because everyone will tell you that this and this and this and this, you can't do this, you can't do that, because. And if you go into the details, they can't really tell you why. There is a level of convincing, but I hate convincing because it's like you're beating up someone and you're trying to make sure, yeah, me. Now, what I like to do is I like to just look at the facts. Just look at the facts. So what I did, I looked together with our legal department. We looked at the US Patriot Act, and actually it's a great thing. It's a great thing to have that in place, because at least when someone wants to access our data, it's complimentary. They have to first ask us. They have to. Otherwise, they can't get to it. And you're audited by the Dutch National Bank, in our case. So you're audited on that process. If you guys would give the data to anyone, without that, you'd be out of business.
So you feel like it's actually accountability, transparency.
Exactly. In Holland, we do have certain laws. But Angela Merkel, she's in the papers. All her stuff's been hacked.
It's true.
It wasn't in the cloud. It was an on-premise service, I can tell you.
So in other words, there's risk everywhere. It's a matter of how much can you control the risk and how much visibility do you have into it.
How much can you control it?
Yeah.
That's an important bit. But I think the strong bit is that you guys are auditable. You guys are certified. You don't want to lose these certificates. If there would be one leakage, you'd be out of business tomorrow.
Yeah, totally.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well,
so that's what we use.
And kind of going one step further than just on security, I mean, there's a lot of similar type questions, I think, about data residency. And back to your point about there's a lot of people who say we can't because, and some of those laws are for real. Some of them, I think, are just perhaps mildly misunderstood. But you mentioned to me not that long ago that let's talk about the whole data center problem. Because, you know, it's not like every vendor that does business in Europe doesn't want to have a data center here. But it's a costly, time-consuming proposition.
Question.
Yeah.
What's Europe?
Well, that's a fair
question
point,
for the
right?
audience. What's Europe? Where would this data center be? In Ukraine. That's what I keep on telling the people. Do we want our data in the Ukraine? Do we want it in Italy? Where do you want it? And everyone will tell you, I want it in Germany. No, I want it in Holland. No, I want it in the UK. I think we first need to sort out what Europe is. That's the big question.
That's not a
So for me, I'm a Dutch person. I'd say put data center in Holland. No, but actually, I wouldn't like it. Put it in.
The Dutch Highlands.
The Dutch Highlands, yeah, good one. So I think we need that debate on, do we trust ourselves as being Europe? And I think that's where the fuzzy question is.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we don't have this data center in Holland. I'm glad we don't have it, because then we wouldn't have all these good discussions.
Fascinating.
Anyone disagree? I know there's someone there that disagrees.
There must be. I'm sure of it. We will open the floor to questions, by the way, so feel free to be thinking of what you might want to ask or debate or, you know, what have you, refute. Okay, so we've talked a little bit, and I think you have a slightly unique perspective in this regard. I think there is still plenty of companies whose security officers and what have you are very wary about, you know, things of this nature, and I think it's going to take more companies that are large, managing crucial business documents in the cloud in a safe way to kind of prove the road is safe for others to travel.
I think we have a great security officer, Jolanta Colucci. I think she's one of the people who really dig into the details, and she's one of the people that also helped me. If you look on my LinkedIn profile, I have a little document about the Patriot Act and what it really is, and it just explains in plain language that even I can understand, because I don't understand all that legal stuff. It just explains what's going on. And maybe a business case here. If you have these kind of questions, we can let Jolanta go to clients.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's actually a great offer. No, I think if I heard him right, correct me if I'm wrong, you just invited the audience to go to your LinkedIn page, see your write-up, and contact you?
Yeah.
If you want to talk about it?
Exactly.
Oh, that's very nice of you. You know, Box workflow is pretty new.
Yeah.
We started a little bit of it last year, but not that much. To what extent are you guys starting to play with that, start to put it to use?
Play? We work. We don't. With our BIM director, Robert Lakey, we're setting up the whole BIS 1192 environment. So that means that from the beginning of a BIM process up to the end where you're archiving, we've got it completely covered. We're not working in that way yet because we're now working out all the bits and pieces. You guys are that slow with all these developments. No, but it's just come out. So we've gone quite far, and I think we'll be doing our first project. We're starting that something in November, beginning December. It's a maritime project. It'll run for about 3 months, and then we'll have our fully compliant BIM Level 2 project, and we'll be audited on that by the UK government.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about things like, are you looking or using electronic signature at all in this process?
Yeah, we're looking into it. We already use it. We do some things with it, but we're really going to start looking at that.
Because if you're going to go end to end with that whole process, I would imagine you're dealing with large numbers of individuals contributing to a bid proposal on the front end of things.
Exactly.
All the way through approvals with signatures, I would assume.
Internal approvals.
Yes.
You get the internal. We do all these internal things, and when we're really sure, then it goes out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And something that I see in a lot of other businesses, not uniquely in yours, is this idea of the review and approval across company boundaries with electronic signature, so that you're not waiting for the fax machine to send something over, or, God forbid, a delivery service to deliver paper, which then gets, you know, if it's electronic, it gets printed, it gets signed, it gets scanned back in, and then sent over. It's just a terrible, terrible process. And I've been relatively impressed by the amount of adoption we're starting to see, particularly with legal groups doing contract management, which would equally apply to any sort of contract, including in the kind of things you're talking about.
I was in a discussion last week, it was Thursday evening, and we needed to be able to prove that our client, I won't say who or what it's about, that they had received a document. The document counted 11,000 pages. 11,000 pages. Can you ever imagine reading it?
No.
Just
That's a really, really, really long book.
But that was just one of them, and there were 6 others around it, and they were all linked together. And in the morning, we could see click, 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 click. This had been viewed, this had been downloaded, this has been viewed, and according to the agreement that we made, as soon as they viewed a document, the ownership goes over. So I'm finished.
Wow.
I can prove that the client has that document.
And has viewed that document.
Exactly.
You may not know that they read all 11,000 pages.
And I don't have to care.
Yeah.
And in the past, we were always worried.
Oh, wait, it's just like the little user agreement that you get on your iPad when you have to agree to the term. How many people read that thing? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You click the button.
You click it.
Yeah. Fascinating. Well, and I think there's a great story I can share that's from a client that was in the traffic business, believe it or not. So it was an American company, one of the early ones to build essentially all the traffic data that feeds network broadcasting stations and online applications and online websites and all that kind of stuff. So the vast majority of places you go other than Google for traffic data came from this group. And they're owned now by Clear Channel, one of the largest organizations in the U.S. for a whole bunch of online activity and advertising. But anyway, so the founder of that traffic organization did business all over the world and had a $10 million U.S. contract that he was in negotiations with the European company to license access to their traffic data. And he happened to be in Tokyo at the time on a bullet train outside Narita heading into Tokyo. And so he got the thing routed to him internally from his lawyers. He used an electronic signature tool with Box to sign it. Immediately, it sent it over to the other party to sign, and the whole thing got done in less than 2 hours. He's like, I can run my business on this iPad. It's a beautiful thing. It's just that was not possible 5 years ago. And I think that's, to me, the exciting promise of where all this stuff is going, is to revamp a lot of the business processes that are bulky, they're slow, they're complicated, and just make them as simple and yet as reliable.
Could you imagine us printing out that contract I was just talking about?
11,000 pages.
The poor postman.
And then having to flip through every
Here's your
page.
signature.
Yeah, not so much.
So moving digital is really going to transform the way we do this. And then from a process point of view.
How do you measure that you were successful or not?
And what's successful?
Yeah, what does success mean? That's my point. I don't know, I'm asking you.
Well, it depends what you mean. Do you mean that our Box implementation was successful, or do you mean I'm successful? What do you mean?
Well, if you're modernizing to new tools, you're doing it with a set of expectations, which we've talked about a little bit. So whether it's going digital or streamlining process or whatever, you mentioned customer happiness. What are your measures of success? Not in implementing a tool like Box, but just in, you've got some goal in mind, or you wouldn't be doing any of this modernization stuff in the first place.
And I see we're successful as we have this great guy in our company, Tim Fittermore. Great guy, knowledgeable. He's one of the best engineers I think we have. He sits with his clients and he folds out these drawings, and he's got to figure out what he needs to sign off, and he doesn't know, and it's a headache. And then they have the wrong version. Nowadays, we have a guy in Liverpool doing his CAD drawing. We manage now about 140, 150,000 CAD drawings on Box. This guy is doing his drawing together with someone in Rio de Janeiro. And Tim goes out to his client with his iPad, logs in, says, is this a big piece, this is the right version? Yes, well, I need to talk about this and that and that. And Tim Fittermore's older than I am.
And he's on an iPad.
And he doesn't want paper drawings anymore. I think that's the basis for success, because our client is now getting the right data at the right time that the client thinks is important, not we think is important. So the client perspective, that's the important.
So so I heard two things in there then. I heard one, from an internal point of view, it's about adoption and use.
Yeah.
So, because of course, if you shove a tool down their throat they don't like, they won't use it, and then you end up with shelfware, wasted money, whatever. So part of it, it sounds like, is adoption. I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but I also heard the customer satisfaction and accuracy of information.
Exactly.
So I guess I heard three things.
The right information at the right time from the client's perspective, not from the perspective when we could deliver it.
Do you survey your customers on that?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
And have you seen any, I mean, I know you guys are still early in some of this stuff, but have you seen improvement with going to a new model of delivery of information?
Yeah. We've seen clients like the Belgian Rail actually comment us that they chose us as the party to work with because of the swiftness that they can collaborate with us.
Really?
Really.
So that meant something important to them.
Exactly.
And what can you share at all what they might have been seeing with other people they might have worked with? I guess we're back to the 11,000 pages in paper, but...
No, it came down to, whenever in our industry, when you want to work with someone, they come with this big handbook. They say, here's the way we work. I'm the contractor, you, clients, are going to work in our way. We don't do that. We sit down with the client and say, okay, what does your process look like? How can we set up this environment so that it fits you?
Yeah.
And I don't have to do that. It's not the techie guys that need to do that. The project manager, sometimes even the secretary can do that. So you quickly engage with the client on the way that they want to work. And that's the way you set it up. And it's a telephone call.
Yeah. Quite a different world than we've seen before.
It's a complete different world.
You don't have to file an IT ticket and get some... Yeah.
Set up an environment, buy a server, put on software, do this, do these changes, and get through all that. No, it's all gone. Another example, we open offices constantly because we work on big projects. So you go into setups with other clients, and you go into an office, and then you have to decide whose IT are we going to use. And then you have to set up the IT. You have to make sure the cables are there, the file server's there. Nowadays, we just make sure there's a good internet connection.
I was going to say, now you just need connectivity.
Exactly, and you work on Box.
Yeah.
And you can collaborate like that.
Very, very cool.
Very fast, yeah.
And any other tools that you found to be critically important in the mix to make this work the way you want?
Well, we focus a lot on the whole Autodesk platform. And one of the interesting things that it says coming, and they've opened it up now on the Autodesk, on the AutoCAD 360. So if you're a CAD draftsman, I don't think we have them here, but if you do your CAD, you can link your AutoCAD 360 to your Box environment. Yeah. So we have a project set up, and the guy can go to his AutoCAD thing, and he can do all his techie stuff in AutoCAD on the files which are in Box. And they're now opening up their Autodesk 360. So that's their future envisioned document management environment. So we'll have all our data on Box. Internally we'll work in a certain way, and from a client perspective or from the Autodesk perspective, the people will be using that kind of tools.
Yeah.
But on the data which is on our platform.
Well, and I think the really interesting message in that is that even with something like Box, we have to be able to fit in with the user's natural way of getting stuff done.
Yeah.
With the tools they want to use to create and edit content and all those kinds of things, which is, we invest a ton in doing that, as you know, making sure that we can fit in with the user's environment appropriately. So we're not forcing them to a totally different way of behaving and using, unless, of course, they're working for paper.
Well, but there were, I have to be honest, there was a change in the way users have to work.
Yeah, so talk about that. Yeah. Talk about that.
We used to work on the file server, so you had your Explorer, and the people would go click, 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 they'd go to the data, they'd open it, they'd always complain that the network is slow. The network's never fast enough. I don't know why, but it's never fast enough. So we changed that, and we gave them the Box, we gave them the sync, and in the beginning there were some issues with sync, worked around all that. You guys came out with version 4, and it was really brilliant. So now you see our users, they use their sync environment. So that's what they
interact with those local files, even though they're syncing to the cloud. And
they don't have a network. They only have a network because it's connecting in the background somewhere and syncing somewhere that they don't know. So you have these CAD draftsmen, and they say, hey, last year when I was doing my CAD, I opened a drawing, I went to get a cup of coffee, I complained to the IT department about 15 times, always that everything was too slow. But now when I open it, it doesn't give me the chance to get coffee anymore because I'm working locally.
Yeah.
And when I switch the thing off, then it syncs all the stuff up.
And that's the beauty of sync and share.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and then the way you control it. So the way that you work actually became easier. But it took a while before we sorted out that story.
Yeah, that's fair.
We first tried to put all the users through the web interface and change the way of work. But we started to understand now you have two ways of work. I don't know if we're allowed to talk about the third way.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, but the stream interface?
Oh, that one. Still new.
It's still new.
We made an acquisition earlier this year of a company called Stream, S-T-R-E-E-M, which is, go ahead.
Yeah, well, that's going to give you the feeling back that you work on, like on a file server, because you'll have your sync environment for your data that you want offline. So that's stuff you're going to take along with you, that kind of stuff. You'll have the stream environment, which looks almost the same, but that data will constantly be online. And then you have your web interface if you want to do the tasks and more the control kind of thing.
Yep, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Round out the environment. Well, let's see if we've got any questions. We've got enough time for a few, if there are any. Otherwise, I've got a couple last ones for you. Anyone can just speak up and ask a question? Or comment, or tell him he's wrong about something. That's okay, too.
You can always tell me I'm wrong. Beg your pardon?
What data is not on Box?
Good question. Question was, what data is not on Box?
We still have data which can't go on Box. Like we have an ERP system, and I don't know how to put that ERP system on Box. If I could, I would, but I can't yet. It's an ERP system. If you look at in the GIS environment, you have two difficulties where you have tens of thousands of really small files that they use to make calculations. That's a bit of difficulty. But if you have really large files, that's currently also a difficulty. But I heard you were sorting that out with DreamWorks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's a bit the boundary. So if it gets bigger than, say, 10 gig or so, you need to be aware that things can get a bit slow, and if it's really too small. Or if it's ERP.
I have a feeling there's another question in there about confidentiality of data. Are there pieces, am I right, are there pieces of information that are maybe too confidential that you don't feel comfortable putting in the cloud?
Employee contracts, payroll information.
We have that on Box. If you look at our setup, our project setup has a legal folder, and the legal contracts will go in there. And a copy of them will also go into the ERP system. And that's because the ERP system has a longer retention period than a project usually has. So you have that data connected to that project longer.
Yeah, and I will tell you that in other accounts, I think you're not unusual, but you're not typical either in that sense. I think we do have accounts that have certain segmentation of their data based on either data type or based on confidentiality or classified information. And they may or may not decide to put that on Box depending on how they perceive their regulation risk and so forth. So we have companies that will start with far less regulatory-oriented data and then move over time and expand to things as they've proven the system is secure enough for them. That's not at all unusual for our customers to go through that process. Another question?
Hello, I have a question. Just regarding the data, the personal information, if your business documents include personal data, would you store this on the cloud? I'm asking that because we're considering using Box in our office, and this was a concern by our legal departments. I mean, we sell insurance, we sell kidnap and ransom insurance. These could contain very, very delicate information, so that's one of the questions I would have for you.
Yeah.
You give your answer, I'll give mine.
Yeah, okay. Well, as long as you guys are working under the US, under the Data Protection Act.
Yeah. Well, and PCI, right?
Exactly.
So personal card information and PII, all that stuff. So, yeah.
Exactly. As long as you guys are working under that, we are allowed, we're obliged to interact with you as if you're a European client. So we don't have to really worry about that. There's new legislation out. It's just at a European level. It's that new that even the best lawyers, they don't know it all yet, so it needs a bit of sorting out. But yeah, currently, as long as you work under those laws, you're okay.
Well, we have a couple things I'll add to that. So the U.S. law of PCI, we actually do comply to. There's also another DSS regulation that we comply with, and we can talk about more details on that front if you like. But in addition to that, part of what when we put DLP up there, granted, we're not a full-fledged DLP provider. There are plenty of those that you probably already work with. But we do have lightweight DLP built into Box. So you can actually prohibit the upload or quarantine the upload of certain kinds of content that contain pattern-matched data. So, for example, and I apologize, I don't know all the details of what your corollaries are across all of the countries of Europe, but like like our social security numbers, or a credit card number, or a passport number, and you can dictate what patterns and or keywords it can match or not match to trigger a quarantine or a prevention of upload. So we can actually help you with that angle as well. And frankly, if you use an industry standard DLP tool, we integrate with the vast majority of those so that you can use the tools you already have in place to help control some of those policies.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other question? We probably have time for one more. Oh, we got a couple here. One up front, and if we have time, we'll get to you too.
My question is actually more related to the ways of working. So how did you, since you also talked about success before, and obviously you've been successful in implementing Box in your organization, but also in changing the ways of working. So I'm more interested in that aspect. So how did you make that happen in the first place?
Well, it wasn't really a make that happen. What you see is, we used to think that you first need to know, have the way of work. You need to really understand your business process, and then you can think of technology. But the strange thing that happened when we started implementing Box, because there was such a lot you could do, together with our business, we had to work out that way of working, looking at all the possibilities you have. When we did our earlier pilots, we looked at a way of working from the impossibilities. There were things that you couldn't do. There were things that there were big boundaries, and that really blocked us getting towards a certain level of the way of work. And what we've now done with that BS 1192 is that we really have a single way of working which should be able to fit throughout the whole company. And I understand we have 10 business lines, so they all have a certain way of work, so that in general they'll be the same, but maybe here and there in the details it'll change a little. But that's the level that we are now getting to. So we have a mutual way of working. That's a general project management approach. It's a setup that we have. And yeah, it just differs slightly throughout the business.
But I heard something really interesting in your verbiage there. You said that you thought about the impossibilities. So that tells me that rather than predetermining the way it gets done, you were asking the question of, what do you want to be able to do?
Yeah.
And in what way, even if you can't do it today.
Exactly.
And then you looked at how you could make that possible.
Exactly.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. So what we did, we kind of mapped out, what is it that you need to do? What's it that you want to do? And what's it that we can deliver? And what are the gaps? And then slowly move in that direction. And
you hinted that there was a little bit of change management, behavioral changes for folks. Like we were talking about, obviously not using the file server in the same way.
I made a joke. I was in Liverpool. There was one manager. He still doesn't sync.
So he has to go in through the web.
So I left the office. I left with a joke. I just called out to the guy. I said, guys, the next time I come in, if you haven't succeeded in getting him to sync, the cake's on me next time. Took a day and he was on sync.
Nice.
No, but that's the way. It's not change management. Change management sounds like something big and heavy. No. You need to make it lightweight, easy, and that's the good thing that Box brought in. We go into the office and we say, okay, what are your challenges? Where are your problems? What can I help with today? And what are things that you're struggling with at a more longer term, and how can we help that?
Well, and that's the new way of working from an IT point of view. This is being an enabler of the business, not just a provider of technology.
Yeah, but it's a whole change for your IT department, because you have to start thinking in ways of working. You have to get into the business. You have to understand. You have to be part of the blood of the business.
Yeah.
Really understand. Sit there with them. That big document, I saw it printed out in Liverpool. My colleague, Eric Lantos, he almost fainted. I said, why are you printing this? We need proof.
Wow.
Where are you going to store it? Where are you going to manage this? Which cupboard is it going to fit?
All right, do we have time for this last question really quickly? We'll try to keep it quick. I know we're just about out of time here, so we'll make this a quick one and then get you to the next session.
Make it quick. Question to Whitney, I think, anyway. What do you find from your clients or users of the Box collaboration technology? What are their typical use cases? Is it the week-to-week, month-to-month operations activity, or is it more applicable or more heavily used by project activity?
Well,
what do you find?
You know, I hate to say it, but the answer is it depends. Interestingly, I mean, if you think about Box, it's a pretty horizontal, generic tool in the sense that anywhere there's a lot of content and a bunch of people involved and a bunch of back and forth, that's where we shine. And that could be just about anything. I mean, it's legal contracts, it's frankly, marketing collaboration with agencies from a design perspective, it's supply chain collaboration, it's customer engagement, it's project work, it's so many different things. And the level of engagement and use varies from use case to use case, but I will tell you that the more successful users of Box, and we've done a lot of studies of usage patterns, use a combination of things. They use a combination of our web application and or local sync plus mobile. Yeah. And they use the product probably at least 3 to 4 times a week. At least. And the heavier users are 3 and 5 times a day. So it just kind of depends on the use case and how often you need to get into things. But if you do it right, my contention, you hit that aha moment that really gets it to take off when you realize you're not printing anything anymore. You don't send email attachments anymore. You send links. And you don't generally use email for conversation. It's all happening in a shared workspace where you can all get to what you need. And that means you're in there all the time. So it varies, but that's kind of the way I would think about it. Great characteristics of successful use of Box. All right, listen, thank you very much. I'm sorry, we'll stay after if you want to chat a little further, but I know people have to get to their next session. So thank you very much, and thank you, Roland.